Hi, everybody. We're back again with just a quick little video today. We're going to look at the end of our last video and just kind of the end of the Kennedy administration. So we ended last video with a look at the Cuban Missile Crisis, and it's really important to understand this event because this is the height of nuclear violence, really, in the Cold War. This is the closest the world comes to complete nuclear annihilation. And there's three countries involved in the Cuban Missile Crisis. There is the United States, represented by John F. Kennedy. There is the Soviet Union, represented by Nikita Khrushchev. So we have the Soviet Union and the USA. And it's taking place really through the vessel of Cuba, Cuba being led by Fidel Castro. And this whole story starts a year or so prior when the United States tries to invade Cuba at the Bay of Pigs, known as the Bay of Pigs invasion, and we try to overthrow Castro from power and take him out. Castro is pissed. Castro starts aligning himself closer with our number one enemy, the Soviet Union and Khrushchev. And so as a result, they start to build up missiles in Cuba. As we start spying on other countries around the world, which is a key part of the Cold War, we find out that Cuba is building nuclear missile launch sites all across the island, and it can hit probably over 90-95% of the land that we own in the continental United States, all of Central America, and a good portion of the northern half of South America. So it is a big, big deal. And for 13 days, we really try to work out how are we going to try to get them to back down without getting them to fire those missiles off, because if they fire those missiles off, it's game over. But ultimately, we do come to some sort of agreement. Both sides begin to back down, and there's a couple of key effects that we're going to look at today. So really, where this starts is this kind of split. It's the United States versus the Soviet Union that's really kind of investing its missiles into Cuba. And we find that they're building these launch sites, and it's not like they're far away from it. They're very, very close to actually getting these done and very close to us geographically. We see these missiles all over the island. We realize it can hit almost all of the United States, so this becomes immediate peril, and we start working to try to figure out a solution for this conflict. Kennedy's original decision is to quarantine or set up almost like a blockade, keep it where it is, isolate it from the rest of the world to prevent any more missiles from getting in. And this is going to get really, really tense as Soviet ships are going to increasingly start coming towards this line that we set up. And we say if they cross these lines, we're going to fire on them. And if we fire on them, that's an act of war. And then they're going to fire the missiles. So we don't really know how this whole thing is going to play out. This kind of becomes this huge stalemate between us and the Soviet Union about trying to solve this issue. Ultimately, it is going to back down, and one of the biggest reasons is both leaders realize that they're harping for the same goal. If you watch the Armageddon letters videos, you really got a sense of that kind of duality, that they both want the same goal, but because of the information they're being fed, they're seeing the world very differently. At the end of the day, the Soviet Union removes its missiles from Cuba, we remove our missiles from Turkey, and we vow to never invade Cuba again, or try to. Um, we really see a couple effects of this, and one of the biggest effects is this becomes a major historical victory for JFK. This isn't just like a little win. This is a huge win, prevented nuclear annihilation. And so despite the problems that he had politically in the earlier incidents, this is a massive, massive victory for Kennedy. The other thing that's implemented is a hotline to improve communications between the USA and the Soviet Union. So we have direct communication. The red phones are installed. It only goes there's one number. That's the only place it goes between the Soviet Union and the USA. It's a closed line. It's the only way you can get there, but it's immediate communication when we need it. And lastly, probably the biggest thing, the most important thing, is this massive, massive event was avoided. We avoided this all-out nuclear war that could have led to the annihilation of a large portion of the human race. And really, this was this movement away from confrontation, more towards negotiation, more towards peace. We're going to see that in our dealings with the Soviet Union, but we're still going to be fighting the Cold War around the world. Now, JFK is really known for his youth and how much energy he had and the energy he brought to politics and for his connections to the civil rights movement, for promising it to man on the moon, his handling of the Cuban Missile Crisis. But all of this is going to be cut short by probably what he is most known for more than anything else, his tragic end. He is going to be assassinated in 1963, the same year that this incident happens. A year after the successfully resolving the Cuban Missile Crisis, Kennedy is going to be going on kind of a little bit of early campaigning tours in the end of 1963, getting ready for the upcoming election a year later. And in his tours, he heads down to Dallas. In Dallas, in November in 1963, Kennedy is going to be assassinated by a man called Lee Harvey Oswald, who, as Kennedy is going along this kind of parade route, and he comes down Elm Street here in this open kind of motorcade he has here, a sniper from the Texas Book School Depository, which is kind of like the warehouse for all of the books for the school district in Dallas, is going to, from the top window, shoot a rifle and hit Kennedy first in the throat and then another time in the back of the head. This is going to be a graphic incident, and to make things worse, his wife is sitting next to him, the governor of Texas, and his wife is right above the Kennedys in the next row. People all around the crowd see this. Now, it is not broadcast on TV. However, it was captured by a home video camera. It's the only recording of this event. It's known by the Zapruder film as the name of this, for the last name of the individual who filmed it. Now, if you look this up, you can find this on YouTube and elsewhere, the raw footage that was released to the public a decade later in the 1970s. But this information completely shocked the nation. No one was expecting this. He was extremely popular at this point in his political career. He was only gaining more traction, and this is going to completely devastate the United States. This whole situation completely devastates the country, the young family in mourning. You see Jackie Kennedy with a veil on here, right? We see his brother, Robert Bobby Kennedy, and little JFK, his son, right, on display here, saluting his father as he goes by. The whole family and the country really in mourning of what's happening. There are political effects of this as well. Now, some of you may know what has happened here with Kennedy, but there's also some belief that there's this kind of invisible organization called the Illuminati that works in secret, that's impacted a lot of different things. There's too many coincidences to really be considered a coincidence in world history. For example, many people draw so many different comparisons between Lincoln and JFK, and these are just a few. For example, Lincoln was elected to Congress in 1846. Kennedy was elected to Congress in 1946. Lincoln was elected as president first in 1860. Kennedy was elected as president first in 1960, so 100 years apart. That's pretty weird. It gets weirder. They were both directly concerned with civil rights. Lincoln with the freeing of slaves in the Civil War and pushing for amendments. Same thing with Kennedy being concerned with civil rights and pushing for civil rights legislation to be passed. Lincoln was shot in the head in front of his wife on a Friday. Kennedy was also shot in the head in front of his wife on a Friday. Weird. Lincoln was shot in a theater named Ford Theater, and Kennedy was shot in a Lincoln, a car made by Ford. So they were both shot in Fords. Weird. It gets weirder. Both of these men were assassinated by men with 3 names, and each of their names consists of 15 letters. John Wilkes Booth and Lee Harvey Oswald. Each of those 3 names have 15 letters in them, and they're split up into 3 different names. Even weirder. Both gentlemen were shot, and we know that, but it gets weirder. Booth was shot, or sorry, Lincoln was shot in a theater booth, right? In a theater, and then fled to a warehouse. He fled to a barn where he was eventually cornered. And Lee Harvey Oswald was shot Kennedy from the warehouse, the school book depository, and fled. He was found in a local public theaters where he was actually captured. Both men were killed before they were actually brought to trial. There are also conspiracies about both gentlemen, that they're part of this larger conspiracy, and this is one of the weirdest ones to me. Not just about them, but both of their successors. Lincoln's successor was Andrew Johnson, born in 1808, and Kennedy's successor was Lyndon Johnson, born in 1908. A lot of weird things here. I don't know. Illuminati may be involved. Now, because there are so many conspiracies, I find them interesting, although they're really far-fetched. There's a lot of different information here, and I include this little infographic for you that we're going to talk about real quick. So there are so many different beliefs about what actually happened, that Oswald didn't do it. Some people believe that a Secret Service agent did it. Some people believe Hoover, who is a member of his cabinet, or maybe Johnson himself had it ordered. Some people believe that Oswald did do it, but he had so much sugar or chemicals in his brain from drinking too much Coca-Cola that made him do it. That's a real belief. Some people believe that there was this so-called magic bullet, that it went through one part of Kennedy and then it bended and it didn't defy the law of gravity, so there had to be 2 shooters. Some people believe that there were religious groups that were out to get him, that the mob went after him, that somebody in his family was trying to assassinate him, that some angry Texas business owners, that maybe one of Castro's men did it, that it was Khrushchev in the Soviet Union, that it was somebody from the military. There's so many different beliefs about what actually happened, and it's so interesting to see everybody has this belief that they really know what happened and how Kennedy was killed. Now, after this assassination, the country is going to go into mourning, and there are going to be a national, essentially, funeral for Kennedy, where people will turn in on their TV to pay respect. Pictures of him being mourned by his family. You see his wife Jackie here, his brothers on either side, and his children. These memories of him as a young father through the White House, taking care of his children, right? The memory of Kennedy is very positive. It's very heroic, like he's a martyr. And the children visiting his gravesite as a national hero. Kennedy is going to be remembered in this way, that he was really a national hero, and so many different things are going to be done in memory of him. So much civil rights legislation is going to be passed in 2 years following his death in memory of what JFK would have wanted. And so many people are going to rally behind LBJ to help support him and the administration do things in Kennedy's honor. Now, this is going to be the end of our quick little video, but the next topic we're going to start going into in the next videos you're going to see are going to be about the Vietnam War. Kennedy does get involved with it in a very little kind of minor way, or some of the base foundation ways, but the president that's going to get heavily involved is going to be President Johnson, who's coming next. So this is going to be our next major topic. We're going to start diving into this subject matter as we go, but if you have any questions, feel free to drop a comment down below and I'll be sure to get back to you.